At my granddaughter's wedding, they handed me a name tag that read, "The Forgotten Old Lady." I didn't ask who printed it. I didn't look around for an explanation. I simply held it between my fingers for a second longer than necessary, then pinned it to my dress. And I smiled. "Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end, and you'll understand why I didn't say a word that day." I had chosen that dress 3 weeks earlier. Navy blue. Modest. Elegant. The kind of dress a woman wears when she wants to belong, without drawing attention. I had it altered slightly at the waist. Cost me $80. The seamstress told me it made me look 10 years younger. I didn't need to look younger. I just wanted to look included. The invitation had arrived 2 months before. Thick ivory paper. Gold lettering. My granddaughter's name embossed at the top like something out of a magazine. I ran my fingers over it when I first opened it. Sat at my kitchen table. Read it twice. She hadn't called me when she got engaged. But I told myself that was just how things were now. Young people were busy. Lives moved fast. Phones replaced conversations. Messages replaced visits. Still, an invitation meant something, didn't it? I remember the day she was born. I was the first one to hold her after the nurse. Her mother, my daughter-in-law, was too exhausted to lift her arms. My son stood beside me, smiling like a boy again. "She's perfect, Mom," he said. And I believed him. I babysat that child for years. Every Wednesday. Every other weekend. I kept a small crib in the guest room just for her. Bought toys. Read bedtime stories. Packed her lunches when her parents worked late. When she was 6, she used to run into my house without knocking. "Grandma, I'm here," she'd shout, dropping her backpack by the door. I never corrected her. Because she was. The venue was beautiful. White roses lined the aisle. Soft music played from hidden speakers. Guests laughed quietly under tall glass chandeliers. Everything looked curated. Expensive. Controlled. I arrived early. 15 minutes before the ceremony. No one greeted me at the entrance. A young girl with a clipboard asked for my name. I told her. She scanned a list, paused for half a second, then reached into a small box. Beside her. "That's yours," she said, handing me the tag. No smile. No eye contact. Just procedure. I noticed the other tags as I walked in. Mother of the bride. Close family. Family friend. Groom's aunt. Clear. Respectful. Expected. Mine was different. Short. Sharp. Final. The Forgotten Old Lady. I found my seat in the 3rd row. Not the front. Not even the 2nd. 3 rows back. Near the aisle. Close enough to see everything. Far enough to not matter. I sat down slowly. Smoothed my dress over my knees. Folded my hands in my lap. To my left, a couple whispered to each other. To my right, an empty chair remained untouched. No one asked if the seat was taken. No one asked if I was comfortable. I saw her before the music changed. My granddaughter. White dress. Long veil. Perfect posture. She looked radiant. For a moment, I forgot the tag. For a moment, I saw the little girl who used to fall asleep on my couch with her head in my lap. For a moment, I almost stood up. Then she walked past me. Not slowly. Not nervously. Just past me. Her eyes moved across the crowd. Over faces, over smiles, over cameras. They did not stop. Not on me. I smiled anyway. A small, practiced smile. The kind you wear when you've learned that reacting only gives people what they want. I clapped when everyone else clapped. I stood when everyone else stood. I sat when they sat. I played my role perfectly, even if no one had written it for me. Halfway through the ceremony, the officiant began thanking the families. He mentioned the bride's parents, the groom's parents, close relatives, people who had supported the couple every step of the way. Names were spoken. Stories were shared. Laughter followed. I listened carefully, not because I expected to hear my name, but because I wanted to be sure that I wouldn't. And I wasn't. It's a strange feeling. To be erased, not by accident, but by design. No confrontation. No argument. No explanation. Just omission. Clean. Quiet. Effective. I looked down at the name tag pinned to my chest. The letters were printed in bold black ink. No decoration. No attempt to soften it. Just the truth, at least, the version they had chosen. The Forgotten Old Lady. I let out a small breath. Not a sigh. Not quite. Just acknowledgement. Because here's the thing they didn't understand. You can only forget someone if they haven't already remembered everything. I had noticed the changes months ago. The shorter phone calls. The missed holidays. The way conversations stopped when I entered the room. I had seen the way my daughter-in-law controlled the guest list, the finances, the decisions. I had seen my son say nothing. That part hurt more than anything. So I stopped asking questions. I stopped offering help. And quietly, I started preparing, not in anger, not in revenge, but in clarity. By the time that invitation arrived, I already knew what kind of day this would be. I just didn't know how far they would go. Now I did. The ceremony ended with applause. People stood, hugged, took photos, filled the room with noise and celebration. I stayed seated for a moment longer. Just one moment. Then I stood up, adjusted my dress, and reached into my purse. My fingers brushed against the envelope I had brought with me. Thick, sealed, intentional. I had prepared it a week earlier. Just in case. I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I looked once more toward the front of the room. At the stage. At the flowers. At the people who had decided who I was. And I smiled again. But this time, it wasn't the same smile. Because what I was about to do next was something none of them had planned for. People moved quickly after the ceremony. Chairs scraped against the floor. Glasses clinked somewhere in the distance. Laughter grew louder, looser. The kind of laughter that comes when the formal part is over and people feel allowed to relax. I stayed where I was for a few seconds longer. Just long enough to watch who walked toward whom, who hugged who first, who got pulled into photos, who was expected. No one looked in my direction. I stood up and walked slowly toward the reception hall. No rush, no hesitation, just a steady pace. The kind that says you belong, even when no one is checking. The room was larger than the ceremony space. Round tables dressed in white linen. Tall centerpieces. Soft lighting that made everything look warmer than it really was. Each table had a card. Names. Categories. Placement. I found mine near the back. Table 14. No label this time. Just my name. Spelled correctly, at least. I pulled out the chair and sat down. Around me were people I didn't recognize. A distant cousin, maybe. A neighbor. Someone from the groom's side who kept checking their phone. No one introduced themselves. No one asked who I was. And I didn't offer. A waiter came by with water. I thanked him. He nodded. Moved on. Simple. Polite. Neutral. Strangely, that felt more respectful than anything else so far. From where I sat, I could see the main table. Long elevated slightly. Positioned so everyone in the room could look up at it. My granddaughter sat in the center, glowing under soft lights. Her husband beside her, smiling wide, one hand resting casually on hers. To her right, her mother. To her left, the groom's parents. Everyone placed with intention. Everyone visible. I wasn't looking for a seat up there. I had stopped expecting that a long time ago. But I did notice something. There wasn't a single empty chair. Not even one. The speeches began. First, the groom's father. Warm. Confident. Told stories that made the room laugh. Then my daughter-in-law stood up. She walked to the microphone like she owned the space. Shoulders back. Chin slightly raised. Her dress, elegant, expensive, carefully chosen. She smiled. And the room quieted. I want to thank everyone who made today possible, she began. Her voice was smooth. Controlled. Practiced. She mentioned vendors. Friends. Family members who had supported them through every step. Names. Again. Always names. I listened. Not because I expected anything different, but because I've learned people reveal themselves most clearly when they think they're being generous. She spoke about sacrifice. About protecting what matters. About keeping the family strong. The words sounded right. They always do. Then she said something that made a few people laugh. We've been very careful about who we let into our lives, and into moments like this. A pause. A smile. Subtle, but deliberate. Some heads turned slightly. Not many. Just enough. I didn't move. I didn't look up. I simply reached for my glass of water and took a small sip. Because I understood. That wasn't a joke. That was a line. Drawn clearly. Publicly. After the speeches, dinner was served. Plates placed. Glasses refilled. Conversations picked up. I ate slowly. Not because I was hungry, but because leaving too soon would have looked noticeable. And today, I had no intention of giving them anything they could label as dramatic. Halfway through the meal, someone approached my table. A young woman. Late 20s, maybe. She hesitated before speaking. Are you with the bride's family? She asked. I looked up at her. For a second, I considered the question. Then I answered. I used to be. She nodded awkwardly. Smiled in that polite, uncertain way people do when they realize they've stepped into something they don't understand. Beautiful wedding, she said. It is, I replied. And she walked away. I watched her return to her table near the front, where people laughed louder, where glasses were already half empty, where belonging looked effortless. I glanced down at my purse, still closed, still holding the envelope. I hadn't planned to act during the ceremony. That would have been messy. This part, this quiet middle, was where people felt safe, where masks loosened, where truth slipped out in small ways. And they had already given me enough. More than enough. I reached into my purse and pulled the envelope out just slightly. Not fully, just enough to feel its edge between my fingers. Solid, real, final. Everything inside it had been arranged carefully, reviewed twice, signed where it needed to be signed, witnessed, filed, and then copied. Because I've learned something over the years. If you want the truth to hold weight, you don't just say it. You document it. Across the room, I saw my son. He was laughing at something someone said, head tilted back slightly, one hand resting on the table, relaxed, comfortable, unaffected. For a moment, I watched him, really watched him, trying to find something familiar, something that still belonged to me. I didn't find it, so I looked away, closed my purse again, and placed both hands calmly on the table. There would be a time to speak, but not yet, because the most powerful moments aren't the loud ones. They're the ones people never see coming. And this room, full of music, laughter, and carefully arranged lies, wasn't ready. Not yet. Dessert was served just as the music started to change. The soft background melodies gave way to something louder, warmer, more celebratory. People began to stand, drifting toward the dance floor in small groups. Laughter came easier now, looser, uncontrolled. I stayed seated, fork in hand, a small slice of cake on my plate. Vanilla, I think. Sweet, but not memorable. I took one bite, set the fork down. From the corner of my eye, I saw a movement near the main table. My granddaughter stood up, lifting her glass slightly. A signal. The room responded almost instantly. Chairs turned. Conversations faded. Attention shifted forward. I just want to say something quickly, she said. Her voice was softer than her mother's, but steadier than I expected. She smiled, looked around the room, let the silence stretch just enough. This day means everything to me, she continued. And I'm so grateful to the people who truly showed up, who've been there for me, not just today, but in the moments that mattered. A few nods, a few soft ahs. I didn't move. Family isn't just about blood, she added. It's about presence, support, loyalty. Another pause. Her eyes moved slowly across the room, table by table, face by face. They didn't stop on me. But we've also learned, she said, that sometimes it's healthier to let go of people who no longer fit into your life. A quiet ripple moved through the crowd. Subtle, but there. I picked up my glass again, took another small sip. No matter who they are, she finished. Then she smiled and raised her glass higher. To new beginnings. The room echoed it back. To new beginnings. Glasses clinked. People drank. Music resumed. And just like that, it was over. Except it wasn't. Because some words don't end when the sound fades. They settle. They stay. They make things clear. I placed my glass down carefully. Not too fast. Not too slow. Just enough to avoid drawing attention. There it was. Said out loud. Not hidden in a name tag. Not implied in a seating chart. But spoken. Clean. Direct. Public. Let go of people who no longer fit. I let the sentence sit in my mind for a moment. Turned it over. Examined it. Then I nodded. Once. To myself. Because for the first time that day, we agreed on something. I reached for my purse. Again. This time, I opened it fully. No hesitation. The envelope slid easily into my hand. Thick. Cream-colored. Sealed with intention, not decoration. My name was written on the front. In my own handwriting. I stood up. No announcement. No sudden movement. Just a quiet shift from sitting to standing. Most people didn't notice. They were already moving again. Talking. Laughing. Heading toward the dance floor. But a few did. The ones closest to my table. They glanced up briefly. Curious. Then looked away. I stepped out from behind my chair. Smoothed my dress once. A habit. Not nerves. And I began to walk. Not toward the exit. Not yet. Toward the front. Each step was measured. Even. Unhurried. The closer I got, the clearer everything became. The lights. The flowers. The carefully arranged perfection of it all. I could see my daughter-in-law now. She was leaning toward someone, laughing softly. One hand resting on the table. Relaxed. Certain. She hadn't seen me yet. My son sat beside her, scrolling through his phone. Detached. Unaware. And my granddaughter was already back in her seat, talking to her husband, smiling, as if nothing had just been said. I stopped a few feet from the main table, close enough to be noticed, far enough to not interrupt. I waited. It didn't take long. My daughter-in-law looked up first. Her eyes met mine. For a second, nothing changed. Then something did. It was small, a tightening around the mouth, a flicker in the eyes. Recognition, not of me, but of the moment. She straightened slightly. The smile remained, but it shifted, less natural, more managed. My son followed her gaze, looked at me, blinking once, as if trying to place why I was standing there. He didn't stand. Of course he didn't. I didn't speak. Not yet. Instead, I placed the envelope gently on the edge of the table, right in front of them. Not pushed, not dropped, placed. The motion was simple, deliberate, impossible to ignore. My granddaughter noticed then. Her voice paused mid-sentence. Her eyes dropped to the envelope, then lifted slowly to me. For the first time that day, she looked directly at me. No smile, no warmth, just awareness. Good. I rested my hand lightly on top of the envelope, not pressing it down, just enough to claim it. This, I said quietly, is for you. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The people closest to the table had already started to notice. Conversation slowed, not stopped, but softened. My daughter-in-law's eyes moved from my face to the envelope and back again. Calculating. What is it? She asked. Her tone was polite. Careful. I looked at her, held the gaze for a moment. Then I smiled. The same way I had smiled when they handed me the name tag. You'll want to open it, I said, and I lifted my hand away. My daughter-in-law didn't reach for the envelope immediately. She looked at it, then at me, then back at it again, as if the answer might appear on its own if she waited long enough. What is this? She repeated. Same question, different tone. I didn't rush to respond. I let the silence sit between us, because silence has a way of making people reveal themselves faster than words ever could. My granddaughter shifted slightly in her seat. Her fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. Not nervous, not yet, but alert. It's something I prepared, I said. My voice stayed even, calm, almost gentle. For today. That caught her attention. Not the words, the timing. For today, my granddaughter asked. A small crease formed between her brows. I nodded once. Around us, the noise in the room had changed. Still loud enough to pass as normal, but softer, closer. People were listening without looking like they were listening. My daughter-in-law finally reached forward. 2 fingers at first, then her whole hand. She pulled the envelope toward her. Slowly, carefully, she turned it over. Checked the back, as if expecting something written there. There wasn't. No need to be nervous, I said quietly. That made her pause. I'm not, she replied. Too quickly. Of course. She slid a finger under the flap. Broke the seal. That small sound, paper giving way, felt louder than anything else in the room. My son leaned slightly closer. Still seated. Still not fully engaged, but curious enough now to pay attention. The envelope opened. A stack of papers inside, neatly aligned. Not thick, but not light either. She pulled them out. Didn't read immediately. Just held them. Weighed them in her hands. Then she looked up at me again. One last time. I didn't say anything. I just met her eyes. And waited. She looked down. And began to read. The first page didn't take long. Her eyes moved quickly at first. Confident. Controlled. Then slower. Then stopped. It was subtle. If you weren't watching closely, you might have missed it. That exact moment when understanding begins. Her shoulders stiffened. Just slightly. What is this? She asked again. But this time her voice was quieter. I tilted my head just a fraction. Keep reading, I said. My granddaughter leaned in, trying to see. My son shifted closer now too. The 3 of them forming. A small circle around something they hadn't expected to face. Page 2. This time, my daughter-in-law didn't rush. She read each line. Carefully. Deliberately. Her lips pressed together. The smile gone now. Completely. My granddaughter reached out. Mom, what is it? No answer. Just reading. Then my son spoke. Let me see. He reached for the papers. She didn't hand them over right away. Another pause. Another decision. Then she let go. He took the documents, held them closer. His expression still neutral, still unaware. That didn't last long. I watched it happen. The exact second it changed. His eyes stopped moving. His jaw tightened. Just a little. Then he flipped back to the first page. Read it again. Slower this time. What is this? He asked. Same question. Different weight. I folded my hands lightly in front of me. It's official, I said. That word landed. Official. Not emotional. Not dramatic. Not personal. Documented. Filed. Final. My granddaughter stood up slightly from her chair now. Not fully. Just enough to see better. What are you talking about? She asked. Her voice sharper now. Less controlled. I turned my gaze to her. You said something earlier, I replied. About letting go of people who no longer fit. Her face didn't change, but something behind her eyes did. I continued. I thought that was very wise. A few people nearby had gone completely quiet now. No pretending anymore. My son lowered the papers slowly. Looked at me. Really looked this time. Mom, he said. It had been a while since I heard that word from him like that. Without distraction. Without distance. I held his gaze. Yes, I said. He glanced back down at the document. Then back at me. You did this? He asked. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I reached forward. Gently. And tapped the top page once. My name is on it, I said. That was enough. My daughter-in-law exhaled slowly. A controlled breath. Trying to steady something that had already shifted. This isn't appropriate, she said. Low voice. Tight. I smiled. Not wide. Just enough. No, I replied softly. What was inappropriate already happened. Her eyes flicked up to mine. Sharp now. The room felt different. Heavier. Like something had been placed in the center of it that no one could ignore anymore. My granddaughter finally spoke again. What does it mean? I looked at her. Held her. Gazed for a moment. Then I answered. It means, I said calmly, that as of this morning, everything that had my name on it, I paused. Just briefly. No longer does. Silence. Real silence this time. No music. No laughter. No movement. Just understanding, spreading. Slowly. But completely. No one spoke. Not immediately. The kind of silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was recognition. My granddaughter was the first to move. She sat back down slowly. Not all the way. Just enough to steady herself. Her eyes didn't leave my face. What do you mean, everything? She asked. I didn't rush the answer. I let her sit with the question. Because sometimes, the weight of not knowing does more than the answer itself. My son was still holding the papers. His grip had changed. Tighter now. Not aggressive. Just anchored. It means, I said, my voice even. The house, the accounts, the trust. I paused. Watched their faces carefully. They've all been reassigned. My daughter-in-law let out a small breath through her nose. A sound that wasn't quite disbelief, but wasn't calm either. That's not possible, she said. Quick. Firm. I turned my eyes to her. It is, I replied. She shook her head slightly. No, you can't just. She stopped herself. Adjusted her tone. You didn't discuss this with anyone, she said. I almost smiled. That's correct, I said. Another pause. Because it wasn't a group decision. That landed. My granddaughter's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. But why? She asked. Her voice had changed now. Less sharp. More searching. I looked at her. Really looked. At the dress. The makeup. The careful image she had built for this day. Then I answered. Because I finally understood something. I said. No raised voice. No anger. Being present doesn't mean being valued. Her expression flickered. Just for a second. My son shifted in his seat. He looked back down at the papers. Flipped another page. These dates, he murmured. Yes, I said. Last week. He swallowed. I saw it. That small movement in his throat. You did all this last week, he asked. I nodded. Including the legal filings, I added. My daughter-in-law leaned forward slightly. Her voice dropped. You're making a mistake. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I glanced around the room. People weren't pretending anymore. They were watching. Openly now. Then I looked back at her. No, I said quietly. I made one for years. She held my gaze. Didn't look away this time. You're upset, she said. Careful again. Measured. I shook my head. No, I replied. I'm clear. That word stayed between us. Clear. My granddaughter spoke again. But where does it go, she asked. A simple question. Direct. I nodded once. That's explained on page 3. I said. All three of them moved at once. Pages shifted. Eyes scanned. I watched. Not their words. Their reactions. My son found it first. I could tell. His posture changed. Straightened slightly. Then stilled. My daughter-in-law leaned closer. Reading over his shoulder now. My granddaughter stood up fully this time. Moved around the table. Positioned herself beside them. 3 people. Reading the same truth. At the same time. And then it hit. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But completely. My granddaughter stepped back first. A small step. Almost unnoticeable. That doesn't make sense, she said. My son didn't answer. My daughter-in-law did. She wouldn't do that, she said. I tilted my head slightly. I already did, I replied. Another silence. Shorter this time. Sharper. My son finally looked up at me. His eyes were different now. Not confused. Not detached. Focused. You transferred everything away from the family? He asked. I held his gaze. I transferred it, I said, to where it would be respected. He frowned. What does that mean? He asked. I didn't answer directly. Instead, I reached forward again and gently turned one of the pages toward them. A small motion. Precise. Read the name, I said. They did. All 3 of them. And that was the moment everything shifted. My granddaughter's hand moved to her mouth, not fully covering it, just touching. My daughter-in-law's face changed. Not dramatically, but enough. The control slipped. Just for a second. And my son, he didn't move at all. He just stared at the page, as if reading it again might change it. It didn't. Because some decisions, once made, don't move. I straightened slightly, adjusted the sleeve of my dress. A small, ordinary gesture. Then I spoke. You said something earlier. I reminded my granddaughter. She didn't respond. I continued anyway. About new beginnings. A pause. I agree, I said. I let that settle. Then added softly, this is mine. My son didn't speak for a long time. He kept staring at the page, as if the letters might rearrange themselves into something more acceptable, something easier to understand. They didn't. My daughter-in-law was the first to recover. She always was. Quick to adjust. Quick to regain control. This isn't final, she said. Her voice was low, but firm again. Measured. I looked at her. It is, I replied. She shook her head. No, documents like this, there's always a process. There are steps. You can't just redirect everything overnight. I didn't interrupt. I let her finish. Because people like her need to hear their own certainty before it breaks. Then I nodded slightly. You're right, I said. There is a process. A pause. And I followed it. That was the part she hadn't prepared for. Her lips pressed together. A small shift. But enough. My granddaughter looked between the 2 of us. Back and forth. Trying to find something stable. But why didn't you tell us? She asked. I turned to her. When would have been a good time? I asked calmly. She opened her mouth. Then stopped. I continued. Before the guest list was finalized? Before the seating chart was printed? Or before I was given a name tag that explained exactly where I stand? My voice never rose. Not once. But the words stayed. She looked down. Just for a second. My son finally spoke again. You could have talked to me, he said. I looked at him. Really looked. I tried, I said. A pause. Do you remember the last time you came by the house? He didn't answer. It was a Sunday, I continued. You said you'd stay for coffee. I let the memory sit there. You checked your phone 3 times before I finished pouring, I added. His jaw tightened. You said you had somewhere else to be, I said. Another pause. I believed you. Silence again. Because some truths don't need explanation. They just need recognition. My daughter-in-law shifted in her seat. This is emotional, she said. Trying again. Different angle. I shook my head. No, I replied. It's documented. That word again. Documented. My granddaughter looked back at the papers. Flipped through them quickly now. Less careful. More desperate. There has to be something we can do, she said. I watched her. For what? I asked. She hesitated. To fix this, she said. I nodded slowly. It's already fixed, I replied. That landed harder than anything else. Because it closed the door she was trying to open. My son exhaled. Long, heavy. Where does it all go? He asked again. I answered this time. Clearly. To a foundation, I said. 3 faces. Same reaction. Confusion first. Then disbelief. Then something else. You gave it away, my daughter-in-law asked. I met her eyes. I placed it somewhere it would be used, I said. She let out a short breath. Almost a laugh. But without humor. So instead of your family, she began. I didn't let her finish. I chose people who show up, I said. That stopped her. Completely. My granddaughter stepped back again. Further this time. You're serious, she said. I nodded. Yes. The music in the background continued. People still moved around us. But this space, this table, felt separate now. Like the rest of the room had faded away. My son looked down at the papers again. Then up at me. You did this because of today, he asked. I shook my head. No, I said. A small pause. Today just made it visible. He stared at me. And for the first time, there was no distance in his eyes. Just understanding. Late. But real. My daughter-in-law leaned back in her chair. Her posture had changed. Less control now. More calculation. This isn't over, she said quietly. I smiled. It wasn't a big smile. Not sharp. Not mocking. Just certain. It is, I replied. Another silence. Shorter this time. Because there was nothing left to question. Only something left to accept. I reached for the envelope. Closed it gently. Slid the papers back inside. Neat. Orderly. Final. Then I picked it up. Not to take it back, but to signal something else. The conversation was done. I looked at my granddaughter one last time. You wanted a perfect day, I said softly. A pause. I didn't come here to ruin it. Another pause. I came here to understand it. She didn't respond. None of them did. Because now they understood too. No one tried to stop me. That was the first thing I noticed. Not when I picked up the envelope. Not when I adjusted my chair. Not even when I slowly stood up from the table. For a family that had just realized something significant had been taken away, they were very quiet. I smoothed down the front of my dress. A simple motion. Habit, more than anything else. Then I reached for my glass. Took a small sip of water. Set it back down exactly where it had been. Still no one spoke. Around us, the reception had started to shift again. Music picked back up. Soft at first. Then louder. People returning to their conversations. To their plates. To their roles. But not completely. Because I could feel it. The glances. The curiosity. The questions forming in other people's minds. Something had happened at this table. They didn't know what. But they knew enough. My granddaughter was the first to break the silence. You're leaving? She asked. I looked at her. Yes, I said. A small pause. I think I've stayed long enough. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something more, but didn't know what. My son stood up then. Quickly. Almost too quickly. Mom, wait, he said. I turned to him. His expression had changed again. Less confusion now. Less shock. More urgency. We should talk about this, he said. I tilted my head slightly. We just did, I replied. He shook his head. No, not like this. Not here. I glanced around the room. This is where it happened, I said calmly. That stopped him. Because it was true. My daughter-in-law stood up next. Slower. More controlled. You're making a scene, she said under her breath. I looked at her. No, I replied softly. You are. A flicker in her eyes. Quick. Sharp. Then gone. My granddaughter stepped closer now, closing the space between us. Grandma, please, she said. That word again. Grandma. It sounded different now. Not distant. Not dismissive. But not quite familiar either. Just uncertain. I studied her face for a moment. Then I asked a simple question. Do you know what my name is? I said. She blinked. What? My name, I repeated. A pause. She hesitated. Not long, but long enough. And that was enough for me. I nodded once. That's all right, I said. No anger. No disappointment. In my tone. Just acceptance. My son stepped in again. This isn't fair, he said. I turned to him. What part? I asked. He opened his mouth. Then closed it. Because fairness is difficult to define when you haven't been paying attention. My daughter-in-law crossed her arms. You're punishing everyone, she said. I met her gaze. No, I replied. A small pause. I'm correcting something. She let out a short breath. This is because of a name tag, she asked. I almost smiled. No, I said. Then I added. The name tag just made it visible. Silence again. But different this time. Less resistance. More realization. My granddaughter looked down at the table. At the empty seat I had just left. Then back at me. You could have just told us, she said quietly. I nodded. I did, I replied. A pause. Just not in words you were listening for. That stayed with her. I could see it. My son ran a hand through his hair. A gesture I hadn't seen since he was younger. This isn't how families handle things, he said. I looked at him. This is how I do, I answered. Not harsh. Not defensive. Just clear. Because that was the difference now. Clarity. I picked up my purse. Held it lightly in one hand. No one tried to take it. No one reached out. They were still processing. Still trying to catch up to something that had already moved forward without them. I took one step away from the table. Then another. Behind me, I heard my granddaughter's voice again. "Are you coming back?" she asked. I paused. Not long. Just enough. Then I turned slightly. "Not like before," I said. And that was the truth. Because some doors don't close loudly. They just don't open again the same way. I didn't look back again after that. Not when I reached the edge of the reception hall. Not when the music swelled behind me. Not even when I heard my name, my real name, called out once. I kept walking. The hallway outside was quieter. Carpeted floors. Soft lighting. The kind of space designed to transition people in and out without disruption. I paused there for a moment. Not because I was unsure, but because it was the first quiet moment I'd had all evening. I adjusted my grip on my purse. Shifted the envelope slightly under my arm. Everything felt lighter. Not happier. Not relieved. Just lighter. Behind me, the doors opened briefly. Laughter spilled out, then disappeared again as they closed. Life inside that room was continuing. Exactly as planned. But without me. And for the first time, that didn't feel like a loss. "Mrs. Carter?" I turned slightly. A young staff member stood a few feet away. Polite. Professional. "Yes," I said. "Would you like me to call a car for you?" he asked. I considered it, then shook my head. "No, thank you," I replied. "I'll manage." He nodded, stepped back, gave me space again. I appreciated that, more than he probably realized. I walked toward the exit, each step steady, unhurried. Outside, the air was cooler. The sun had dipped lower. Late afternoon, moving toward evening. I stood there for a moment, just breathing. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Faster this time. Less controlled. "Mom." I closed my eyes briefly, then opened them again before turning. My son. He had followed me out. Tie slightly loosened now. Jacket unbuttoned. Not the composed version of himself from earlier. "Wait," he said, catching his breath. I faced him fully. "I'm here," I said. He stopped a few feet in front of me. Not too close. Not distant either. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then, "I didn't know," he said. Simple. Direct. I nodded once. "I believe you," I replied. That seemed to surprise him. "You do?" he asked. "Yes," I said. A pause. "You didn't know?" I repeated. He looked down briefly, then back up. "But I should have," he added. I didn't answer, because that part was his to carry. "I should have noticed," he said. Another pause. "You were there," he continued. "At every holiday. Every birthday. He stopped himself. I watched him carefully. "Presence isn't the same as attention," I said quietly. He nodded. Slowly. "I see that now," he said. We stood there in silence for a moment. Not uncomfortable. Not tense. Just real. Then he glanced back toward the doors. "She's upset," he said. I followed his gaze for a second. "I imagine she is," I replied. He exhaled. "This is going to affect everything," he said. I turned back to him. "It already has," I answered. Another pause. "What happens now?" he asked. A reasonable question. I considered it, then answered honestly. "You go back inside," I said. He frowned slightly. "And you?" he asked. I gave a small, calm smile. "I go home." He hesitated. "That's it?" he asked. I nodded. "That's enough." He looked at me for a long moment, as if trying to memorize something, or understand something he hadn't before. Then he said, "Can I come by tomorrow?" The question lingered. Not casual, not automatic. Careful. I thought about it. Then I answered. "You can come by," I said. A small pause. But this time, I held his gaze. "Stay for the coffee." Something shifted in his expression. Subtle, but real. "I will," he said. I nodded once. "Good." Another silence. Then he stepped back. Not because I asked him to, but because he understood. "Take care, Mom," he said. I inclined my head slightly. "You too." He turned, walked back toward the doors. This time, I watched him go. Because this ending wasn't like the others. It wasn't loud. It wasn't broken. It was clear. I turned in the opposite direction. Toward the parking lot. Toward my car. Toward a life that no longer needed to ask for space. And as I walked, I realized something simple. They didn't forget me. They just got used to not seeing me. And now, they would have to learn what that really meant. The drive home was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that feels empty. The kind that feels settled. I didn't turn on the radio. Didn't reach for my phone. I just drove. Hands steady on the wheel. Eyes forward. At a red light. I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. For a moment, I studied it. Same face. Same lines. Same woman who had sat at that table just an hour ago. But something was different. Not visible. Not something anyone else would point out. But I could feel it. Clarity has a way of doing that. When I got home, the house greeted me the same way it always had. Still. Familiar. Unchanged. I unlocked the door. Stepped inside. Closed it gently behind me. No noise. No voices. No movement. I placed my purse on the small table by the entrance. Set the envelope beside it. For a moment, I just stood there. This house had held decades of my life. Every holiday dinner. Every quiet morning. Every moment I thought mattered. And for a long time, I believed those moments connected me to the people I shared them with. Tonight made something clear. Memories don't guarantee presence. I walked into the kitchen, filled a glass of water, took a slow sip. Then I sat down. Same chair. Same table. But the silence felt different now. It wasn't waiting for anything. It wasn't hoping. It just existed. I reached for the envelope. Opened it again. The papers inside were exactly as I had left them. Neat. Precise. Final. My name. My signature. Dates. Official seals. Everything documented. Everything done. I didn't need to read it again. I already knew what it said. But I looked anyway. Not to check. To acknowledge. Because decisions like this deserve to be witnessed. Even if only by yourself. I slid the papers back inside. Closed the envelope. Then I stood up. Walked down the hallway. Each step familiar. Measured. I stopped at a door halfway down. Opened it slowly. Inside, shelves lined the walls. Boxes. Albums. Old photographs. A room filled with history. I stepped in. Closed the door behind me. For years, I had kept everything. Carefully. Organized. Preserved. Every birthday card. Every school picture. Every handwritten note. Proof of connection. Proof of belonging. I reached for one of the boxes. Opened it. Photos stared back at me. Frozen smiles. Moments. Captured in time. My son as a child. My granddaughter as a baby. Family gatherings where everyone stood a little closer. Smiled a little wider. I picked up one photo. Held it for a moment. Then set it back down. Not with sadness. Not with regret. Just understanding. These moments were real. But they were also finished. I closed the box. And instead of putting it back on the shelf, I carried it with me. Back down the hallway. Into the living room. I placed it near the door. Next to my purse. Not packed. Not labeled. Just moved. Because some things don't need to be erased. They just need to be relocated. I sat down again. Looked around the room. This space. This life. For so long, it had been structured around people who no longer saw me clearly. And now, it didn't have to be. My phone buzzed softly on the table. I glanced at it. Didn't pick it up immediately. Then I reached for it. A message. From my daughter-in-law. Short. We need to talk. I read it once. Then again. Same words. Same tone. But something about it felt different now. Not urgent. Not powerful. Just late. I set the phone back down. Didn't respond. Not out of anger. Not to make a point. But because not every message requires an answer. Another buzz. This time from my granddaughter. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I looked at the screen. Then placed the phone face down. Because apologies only matter when they arrive before the decision is made. And mine already was. The house remained quiet. But this time, it didn't feel like something was missing. It felt like something unnecessary had finally been removed. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes for a moment, and let the stillness settle around me. Tomorrow, my son would come by. He said he would. This time, he would stay for coffee. And maybe that would mean something. But tonight wasn't about what might change. It was about what already had. I opened my eyes, looked toward the door. For years, I had kept it open. Figuratively, emotionally, always ready, always available. Tonight, for the first time, I didn't feel the need to. Not because I was closing it, but because I finally understood, not everyone who walks through it is meant to stay. I didn't interrupt. About being present and not being valued. He let out a small breath. I didn't realize I was doing that, he said. I looked at him. I know, I replied. He looked up. You do, he asked. Yes. A pause. Most people don't realize what they stop seeing, I added. That stayed with him. He leaned back slightly. I should have noticed, he said again. I didn't repeat anything this time. Because repetition doesn't always deepen understanding. Sometimes it just fills space. Instead, I asked, "What do you notice now?" He paused, thought about it, then answered, "That you were always there," he said. A small breath. And I stopped treating that like it mattered. I nodded once. "That's accurate," I said. No anger. No softness added to it. Just truth. He accepted it. Didn't argue. "That's why you did it," he said. I tilted my head slightly. "Partly," I replied. He waited. "For the rest?" he asked. I looked at the table, at the 2 cups, at the space between us, then back at him. "The rest," I said, "was choosing where I am seen." Silence. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was understood. He nodded slowly. "I don't expect you to change anything back," he said. I studied his face. That mattered. Not the words. The acceptance behind them. "I won't," I replied. He nodded again. "I figured," he said. A small pause. "But I'd like to show up differently," he added. I didn't respond right away. Because words like that aren't measured in the moment. They're measured over time. So instead, I asked, "Will you stay for another cup?" He looked at his cup, then back at me. A small, almost hesitant smile appeared. "Yes," he said. And this time, he didn't check the clock. He stayed longer than I expected. Not because of the coffee. The second cup had gone cold halfway through. But he didn't rush to leave. That was new. We talked. Not about everything. Not about the documents. Not about the wedding. Not directly. Instead, we talked about smaller things. The neighbor who had finally fixed their fence. The grocery store that had changed its layout again. The old oak tree in the backyard that needed trimming. Ordinary things. Things that don't sound important. But they are. Because those are the conversations you have when you're actually present. At one point, he stood up, walked over to the window, looked out into the yard. "It looks smaller," he said. I remained seated. "It didn't change," I replied. A small pause. "You just stopped looking at it every day?" He nodded slowly. "I guess I did," he said. He stayed by the window a moment longer, then turned back. "When did that happen?" he asked. I didn't answer immediately. Because moments like that don't have a single point in time. They build, I said. A pause. Quietly. He accepted that. Came back to the table. Sat down again. This time, he didn't reach for his coffee. He just Saturday, "I saw her message this morning," he said. I knew who he meant. I nodded. "I did too," I replied. He watched me carefully. "You didn't answer," he said. "No," I said. Another pause. "She's upset," he added. I didn't respond right away. Then, "She's reacting," I said. That distinction mattered. He leaned back slightly. "She thinks you did this to hurt her," he said. I met his gaze. "She thinks everything is about her," I replied. No sharpness. No edge. Just clarity. He didn't argue. Because somewhere, he knew it was true. "She wants to come by," he said. I considered that. Then asked, "Does she want to come by, or does she want something changed?" He didn't answer immediately. Because he understood the difference. "I don't know," he admitted. I nodded. "Then there's nothing to respond to yet," I said. Silence again. But it wasn't avoidance. It was selection. Choosing what deserves attention. After a while, he stood up. Not abruptly. Not like before. Just naturally. "I should go," he said. I nodded. "All right." He hesitated. Then, "Can I come back next week?" he asked. I looked at him. Not at the question. At the intention behind it. Then I answered. "If you'd like to," I said. A small pause. "The door isn't locked." That seemed to settle something in him. Not fully, but enough. He picked up his keys. Walked toward the door. I followed. Not out of habit, but because I wanted to. He opened the door. Stepped outside. Then turned back. "Mom," he said. I met his eyes. "I'm glad you didn't just disappear," he added. I held his gaze. "I didn't," I replied. A pause. "I just stopped standing where no one was looking." He nodded. And this time, he didn't try to fill the silence after that. He just accepted it. "See you next week," he said. I inclined my head slightly. "Take care." He walked to his car. Got in. Drove away. I stood at the door for a moment. Not watching. Not waiting. Just standing. Then I closed it. The house returned to its quiet again. But it wasn't the same quiet as before. It had shape now. Boundaries. I walked back into the kitchen. Picked up the empty cups. Rinsed them. Set them in the sink. Simple actions. But intentional. Everything felt intentional now. My phone buzzed again on the table. I didn't rush to it. When I did pick it up, I already knew who it was. My daughter-in-law. Another message. We need to resolve this. I read it once, then set the phone back down. Because some things aren't meant to be resolved. They're meant to be understood. And whether she understood or not didn't change what had already been decided. I walked into the living room, sat down. The box of old photos was still by the door, unmoved. I looked at it for a moment. Then I stood up, picked it up, and this time, I carried it somewhere else. Not back to storage, but not by the door either. Somewhere in between. Because not everything needs to be held onto. But not everything needs to be let go of completely either. A few days passed, quietly, without interruption. No more messages from my daughter-in-law. Not after the last one. We need to resolve this. I had read it, understood it, and let it sit exactly where it belonged. Unanswered. Because not every situation requires resolution. Some require acceptance. The house settled into a new rhythm. Morning coffee. Afternoon light through the window. Evenings that didn't feel like waiting. I moved through it all without hesitation. Not filling silence. Not avoiding it either. Just living in it. One afternoon, I found myself standing in front of the photo box again. The same one I had moved from the storage room. It sat on the side table now. Not hidden. Not displayed. Just present. I opened it. Slowly. Inside, the same memories waited. Unchanged. I picked up a photo near the top. My granddaughter. 6 years old. Missing 2 front teeth. Holding a birthday cake she could barely carry. I looked at it for a long moment. She had looked at me differently then. Not because I had more to give. Not because I was useful. But because I was there. I set the photo aside. Then picked up another. My son. Younger. Standing in the backyard. Trying to build something with wood that didn't quite fit together. He had asked for help. And I had been right there beside him. Not fixing it for him. Just staying. I placed that one down too. One by one, I went through them. Not to hold on to the past, but to see it clearly. Because clarity isn't just about what you walk away from. It's also about what you understand differently. After a while, I closed the box. Not with hesitation. Not with regret. Just finished. Later that evening, the phone rang. Not a message. A call. I looked at the screen. My granddaughter. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered. Hello, I said. A small pause on the other end. Hi, Grandma. Her voice was softer than before. Less certain. Yes, I replied. Another pause. I was wondering if I could come by, she said. I didn't answer immediately. Not to make her wait, but to understand the moment. Why? I asked. She hesitated. I just want to talk, she said. Simple words. But this time, they weren't rushed. They weren't demanding. They were careful. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. You can come by, I said. A small breath on the other end. Thank you, she replied. We didn't say much more after that. Just a time. An understanding. When I hung up, I didn't feel anticipation. I didn't feel concern. I felt steady. Because this wasn't about going back. It wasn't about restoring what had been. It was about seeing what could exist now. The next day, she arrived. On time. No hesitation at the door. Just a knock. Clear. I opened it. She stood there. Same face. Same eyes. But not the same presence. Hi, she said. Come in, I replied. She stepped inside. Looked around. Just like her father had. As if noticing things she had passed 100 times before. We sat at the table. 2 chairs. 2 cups of coffee. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she did. I didn't know, she said. I looked at her. I believe you, I replied. Her shoulders dropped slightly. I should have, she added. I didn't interrupt. I just thought everything would always be the same, she said. A small pause. That you would always be there. I nodded. I said. Another pause. But I won't always be where I'm not seen. She looked down at her hands. Then back at me. I see you now, she said. The words stayed between us. Not as a promise, but as a possibility. And that was enough. I didn't ask for more. Didn't need to. Because this time, it wasn't about being included. It wasn't about being acknowledged in a room full of people. It was about something quieter. Something more precise. Being seen by choice. We sat there a while longer. Talking. Listening. Not fixing everything. But not ignoring it either. When she left, she paused at the door. Can I come back? She asked. I met her eyes. Yes, I said. A small pause. Just come as someone who sees. She nodded. I will. I watched her walk away. Not with the same feeling as before. Not with distance. But not with attachment either. Just understanding. I closed the door. The house was quiet again. But it wasn't empty. Because this time, the silence didn't mean I had been forgotten. It meant I had finally chosen where I belonged. And that made all the difference.